a really interesting story for you now. Well, I think so anyway. Some of you might go, what the hell's he talking about? We've got Olivia Sanders in the studio with us. She is New Zealand Cashmere Business Development Manager. She's dealing with industry and supporting over 20 South Island growers as well. Also, third generation fine wool farmer. So she's got that side as well. It's not all just the cashmere. Mount Campbell Station in Alexandra. Lovely to have you in the studio. How are you?
Wonderful. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
No, it's an interesting story. Tell me firstly about where you farm and the family sort of history, where and all that sort of stuff. Set the scene for us.
Yeah, so I'm a third generation merino farmer. We're based out of Alexandra, so up in the big clock on the side of the hill that you see in Alexandra.
Yeah.
Sort of like the Hollywood sign, but Alex version. You carry on up behind that clock and you go about 10, 12 k's back there on a narrow gravel road, and that's where we farm.
All right.
So we're one of three big stations out there. It's all Sanders country, so we have fine wool merino, and we also run Angus cattle and now cashmere goats, as well as a whole lot of feral ones.
Yeah, I can imagine. So tell me, when did the cashmere goat part of it all start? Because we all know the attitudes, particularly of, South Island, is it high country?
Yes.
Yeah, South Island high country farmers to goats, jeez.
Yes, well, so I was working with Farm IQ. I was a business manager for them and got shoulder tapped about this opportunity because I'm well known for liking a bit of a challenge, love fine fibre, obviously having grown up with it, and really open to opportunities to move ag forward. However, myself, I'm not immune to the perceptions about goats, we muster about 1,000 feral goats a year for meat, and we obviously do a bit of pest control at home as well. So I've got a bit of a history of loving to hate goats, as do most farmers across the country. But I've done a big 180. When they first approached me, I said, "Oh my God, goats! I think you're barking up the wrong tree here." And they said, "Hey, well, actually, no. Come and see what we've got to say. Have a look at the research and work with the animal, and then you decide." And sure enough, it stacked up. I went and saw the animals, worked with them, definitely not like the feral goats I've been chasing around the hills, and looked at what they can do for farming systems as a whole. Really, really exciting around what they can do in terms of improving clover cover, biological weed controls, spending less money, time, machinery costs on weeds, what they can do fibre-wise, really exciting. Just a huge opportunity for farmers to lift more, lift their farming system more without putting a whole lot of inputs in, which was really exciting. We keep getting asked by government, do more with less, do more with less. Well, here's an opportunity.
Interesting, yeah. So NZ Cashmere has been around for about 25 odd years, I think I was reading, or something like that.
Yeah, so New Zealand Cashmere was started by David Shaw down in South Otago, and he did a wonderful job. He started in the 80s, had his first flock. He was one of the only ones that really carried on, continuing to breed cashmere and share the fibre, but there was nowhere for it to go.
Right.
So about 4 years ago now, he started knocking on doors going, right, I've got a decision to make here. What do I do with this fibre? Do I let these goats go? So he knocked on doors and actually found wool yarns who were saying, actually, yes, we utilise cashmere as a part of our offering to fashion houses across the world. Anyway, we're using Mongolian and Chinese cashmere. Don't like using it.
Right.
Can we grow it here in New Zealand? Yes, amazing. Well, how do we get this industry up off the ground? So David Shaw and Wool Yarns worked together on this project, and Wool Yarns have now got 100% ownership of New Zealand Cashmere, while David focuses on his genetics business, which is Hapara Genetics, focusing on cashmere genetics. So Wool Yarns have done this before. So they're 75 years old, New Zealand owned and operated. They did the possum merino industry, so they engineered that merino yarn. So they've done this before, taking a fibre, taking a pest, and turning it into a profit for people. So we're doing the same with cashmere, and actually cashmere, we don't need to kill the animal to get the fibre, and they add a whole lot of value to the farm as well.
That's really interesting. And of course, cashmere's got such a great reputation as well as a fibre around the world, right? It has done for decades, yeah? Yeah,
it does. It's a $3 billion global industry, and it only goes up. This is the sort of industry that isn't affected by pandemics or recessions. That just it's not a blip on the radar for them, because they've got a level of wealth that we don't see here in New Zealand, and it is one of the most sought after, rarest fibres in the world.
So how many goat farmers for the cashmere, for the purposes of cashmere, what's the volume like of that in the country at the moment? Like, what sort of numbers are we talking about?
Yeah, so we've got 6,500 farmed white cashmere animals in New Zealand. However, to be honest with you, there is over 100,000 cashmere growing animals across the country because, and I'm not meant to call them this, but feral animals, those feral goats we have running around the hills, they produce a small amount of coloured cashmere already.
Right.
So they are a natural resource for people to get up and running really, really quickly because they're already producing a bit of cashmere. Put a white buck over those, a white cashmere buck over those, 95% of them will come out white. So you've got a really valuable animal on your farm that's already running around there anyway. Let's make it valuable. Let's get it to start returning fibre returns for you. Let's start focusing that animal a little bit more, farming it a bit better so we can improve, our returns just in fibre, but also in our clover, in our pasture, quality and quantity, and reduce some weeds. So we've got lots of farmers here that could be cashmere farmers and sort of unwittingly are, but they're just not utilising it.
You were mentioning to me earlier, that's fascinating by the way, it's really interesting too, but you were mentioning that like around field days and stuff, what did you call you? Like you were known as, I don't know, what was it, the annoying goat girl or something like that?
A bit of the crazy goat girl.
Crazy goat girl, that was it.
It's, and look, up until now, so I've been with New Zealand Cashmere for about 2.5 years now. A lot of the events that I've gone to, people would avoid eye contact. It would just be, they see the Cashmere sign and, hand up, just walk straight past, don't want anything to do with it. But now the tides are turning,
That's
and
good.
it's a bit of a sign of the times, but it's also, we've got more farmers coming on board and being able to share the story about, hey, these things aren't actually as, they're not hard to farm, they're really clever, but that's a good thing. I don't need to hunt them with dogs, they just walk on into the yards, they're not pushing on my fences, all of those bits and pieces. Farmers are starting to talk, so that's great, but also it's a diversification option and people are looking to cut costs, utilise some goats.
How much would it set me back if I wanted to get a buck?
So bucks are going for $1,000
Okay.
a head, and he'll cover 80 to 100 does depending on what your system's like.
Yeah.
And a doe, a good sound white breeding doe that's ready to kid now, she'd be worth about $125 a head.
Right.
But of course you can just muster in those. We're meant to call them foundation animals, so that's what I'm going to call them, foundation animals. Those coloured animals that are running out of control on the farm at the moment, those are foundation animals.
Foundation animals. And what was the one you said you couldn't say? Feral?
Yes, that's what my foundation animals are.
Right, okay. So what's with the thing feral? It's funny how people always say that, They was like, I'm not supposed to say that word anymore. I said, well, you're in a safe space here, Olivia, but I know what you're saying. I'm just interested in that, how we, change words of things and stuff like that.
Yeah. Look, it's a perception thing, as well. We don't want to be lumped in with those feral goats because they are a pest.
Yeah,
and
right.
that, people don't like them. The other part of it is that we have been really lucky to have gotten some SEEE funding. And so as part of that, we want to be looking at how do we elevate the industry, and being associated with ferals probably isn't exactly where we want to be.
So it's an image tidy up.
It's an image tidy up. There's a bit of PR involved in getting in, lifting the goat industry.
Yeah, but there isn't lifting any industry though, right? And this is clearly where you are obviously, you do a lot of driving around, and this is a big role.
Yes.
And I guess the stage that the industry's at now, I guess it's quite exciting on the one hand and bloody challenging on the other,
Yeah, it is challenging, and it's exactly what I say. People go, well, what are you doing now, Olivia? And I go, we're rebuilding the cashmere industry in New Zealand, and getting goats on farm with farmers, it's challenging, but it is really, really exciting. And I tell you what, I have stories coming out my ears now of all of these weird and wacky situations that I've gotten myself into, driving up driveways or into, deep into the Marlborough Sounds where there's no reception and, all sorts of, look, that's a whole nother story to go into, but all of these weird and wacky things that I'm doing as part of getting this industry up and running. But we want to get away from that image of being, goat people being a bit different. It's not a cottage industry any longer. It is a real commercial option for people. So we're working alongside Abacus Bio, Ag First, Ag Research, all of those guys to get into some commercial farming operations, to open up some pilot farms that farmers can come in and go, right, how does this actually work for your business? And let's open up the books and see how they stack up. So that's what's really exciting, and we're moving into that phase now.
Yeah, well, that's the interesting part. So, nuts and bolts, right? Nitty gritty. So, let's say, what would you recommend, like, in terms of numbers for any sort of viable return?
Yeah, so I like to say to people, and it's part of weeding out, you know, our little lifestyle blocks that come through as well that would love a little white goat. But
those people are just annoying.
They're really passionate, and it's awesome.
You are good. Great job on the PR, Olivia. Brilliant.
Thank you very much.
I'll say it. Yeah.
So I like to say to people, look, if you've got about 100, anything over 150 does being shorn each year is when it's starting to wash its own face. But then, like I say, the big thing about Cashmere as a part of a farming system, because we've worked on gross margin calculators alongside Abacus Bio, we can provide them to people. But the big thing about it is what is it doing for the rest of the farm, and what is it doing for your other stock? So if I am improving my clover content by 30% by running some goats in front of my cattle or my sheep, if I've got 30% more clover, what does that do to my daily live weight gain? It can, you know, if that's improving my daily live weight gain, and I get to move lambs on earlier, or I'm finishing the cattle better, what does that mean for my bottom line? So it's about improving the entire farming system, not just, I'm going to have some goats and this is their silo. It's a complementary livestock unit.
All right, okay, well that's one side of it. I buy that, I take that on board, but then people also go, okay, well, so how's the market? What's the process? What's the end use? What are we getting per kilo? Like those sorts of things.
So, again, an exciting time, but of course I'm biased. But so New Zealand is in a really unique position. So traditionally, Mongolia, China and Iran are our producers of cashmere worldwide. They've got huge issues in terms of ethical practices, animal welfare, environmental issues. They've got no traceability or sort of sustainability story. So when this product is going into, you know, a jumper that is €5,000, that end consumer wants to know that my €5,000 jumper isn't, you know, the farmer that's produced that fibre isn't getting paid 50 cents for it. They want to know that everybody along that chain is sustainable, ethical, traceable, all that story. So they can't tell that story. New Zealand can. So that's really exciting. So we are able to, you know, charge a premium for what we're producing here, which is where New Zealand needs to be. Don't get me started, but that's where we need to be in terms of whatever we're producing, food, fibre.
I 100% agree with you. I think that's literally the only way to go forward.
Yeah. And so New Zealand now, so wool yarns have, like I say, they own New Zealand Cashmere, and they've come to the party big time in terms of they've just finished building a $3 million processing plant that's bespoke for cashmere, and it can do some possum bits and pieces as well. But this is a huge bit of tech in New Zealand. It's actually first of its kind in the southern hemisphere, and one part of it is the first of its kind ever, which is really exciting. But anyway, so that's a huge show of support of, hey, look, it's not a fly-by-nighter. We're here for the long haul, and we really believe in our ability to process this and New Zealand's ability to produce a lot of cashmere.
Where's that plant?
So that's in Wellington.
Right.
So we've got the whole supply chain sorted. We have so all of the fibre will be going into luxury fashion houses overseas. So it's going into the global market. We have them calling, texting, emailing every week. They're calling me and saying, all right, can we have 25 tonne next month? Yeah, no, it doesn't really work that way. Oh, well, okay, but what about 30 tonne in 2 months' time? Like, we'll settle for that. And I'm going, yeah. So we've got the market sorted. We've got the supply chain sorted, all in New Zealand, which again is all about keeping the profit here, keeping the money in New Zealand. And now what we need is actually the supply. So we've sort of gone about it the wrong way, but what a great problem to have.
Yeah, and it's a good opportunity clearly for people to jump on board here, right?
Yes.
Which you know, and shit, you sell the industry well. I got to tell you, like, yeah, I'm sold. I'm convinced.
Well, sure. I haven't actually mentioned the money. Sorry, I just thought, oh my God, Olivia.
Yes, yeah, the money. Come on,
come on, show me the money. Yeah. So it's between $110 and $150 a kilo.
Okay.
For the fibre. So that's obviously when we look at what's happening, particularly in crossbreed. Look, we're never saying go and replace your sheep, definitely not. And like I say, as a farmer myself, please don't. That we need to sort out the wool industry's issues in another conversation.
This is additional.
This can supplement.
Stream.
Yeah, exactly. This can supplement what else we're trying to do, and it's an opportunity for everybody. You know, the Merino Club has been exclusive within New Zealand. You know, it's climate controlled a wee bit. We can't run our merinos somewhere wet or wherever they love to pack up and die. Cashmere goats, we've got them literally all over the country, from Southland to the West Coast to Northland, everywhere in between. You can grow a much finer fibre than that New Zealand Merino Club anybody can, which is exciting.
And it is important to make the distinction as well that it's not one or the other. No one's saying replace the sheep's wool.
Totally.
Right?
No, God, no.
Because that's often, people think sometimes the perception can be when something comes along that it's one or the other.
Yeah, no, please, no. And look, we only ever, and the good thing about the goats is, again, because they're eating differently than your sheep and cattle, they'll eat up to 16 different plant species that sheep and cattle won't, particularly weeds. They're half a stock unit. They're light on their feet, and a lot of the time they're not even competing for feed. They're looking for weeds, they're looking for seed head.
Yeah.
So we say to people, and the science says as well, it's not just me, that you can add up to 10% of your stock units in goats without replacing anything else, without taking anything else out of your system, because they're not competing. Once you get up over that 10% and looking towards 20%, yes, we might need to make some adjustments.
Yeah.
But it does depend on where your goats are. If you've got a really high browse block that you've got them on, so I'm talking about scrub and lots of weeds and bits and pieces, those goats are just going to really hone in on that. They'll eat a really large, over 60% of their diet will just be in that browse type.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so then the cost of having them is, what you're trying to say is pretty low. But what about things like, I guess, so fences, shearing, I don't know, feet,
yes,
general animal care, I suppose, and
I love it.
Yeah.
Look, and what we get with people is they come and go, oh, goats, and then they go, right, well, tell me about how to fence them, because that's our number one thing. I couldn't keep them in. I can't even keep a sheep in. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, firstly, that is a concern. But so what we say typically, and what we find, is that your normal sheep and beef fences are fine. If we can add an outrigger about hammer height and put some power through that, perfect.
Okay.
Goats are really clever. They're thin-skinned. If they get a zap, away they go back. Even our feral goats at home, and I can call them that because those are the ones destined for the truck. But when the truck can't come at our house, and we've mustered all these goats in, and we're like, oh my god, what are we going to do? We put them in our bull paddock, and again, because it's electrified, we've never had one get out of there, because they you see them, they'll challenge the fence once or twice, and then no more. And within a week, those feral goats are pretty well domesticated. We move animals in and out of that paddock, and they just mob up into the side. But that's an aside. So fencing wise, not a huge issue. You can have netting. You don't need deer fences, but if you've got deer fencing, great, easy. The other part is around feet. Feet have been a huge focus genetically for the last sort of 30 years. So we do see a little bit of scald from time to time, but you'll see that in your sheep anyway. So we're not needing to foot bath or anything like that regularly. The other part is parasites. So goats have a really fast metabolism, so they'll show worms faster than sheep will. People say to me, oh my goodness, you're going to bring all these worms onto my farm with your goats. No, that's not the case. They're going to show you've got worms on your farms, your farms, rather than your sheep will maintain for a little while. And that's just a management thing. So goats like to be eating up at about chest height, or at the very lowest about 7 centimetres. Okay. So if you can keep them above there where they like to be eating, that's out of the worm larvae. They're not going to pick it up, and we don't have so much issue. So most of our growers are only drenching once, maybe twice a year, because they're following the right management practices. We never want to get into that issue of, we're having to drench on the dot every, periodically, because we don't want to get into a resistance sort of area, as we've learned from other livestock.
Okay, so that's interesting. Yeah, right. So what you're effectively saying here is that it's a relatively low maintenance thing to do.
Yeah, definitely low input. Low input. Work really, really well in with the cattle system. So goats and sheep share the same worm families, but if you're running them with cattle, happy days.
All right. Interesting. Oh, look at this. This is it's very interesting. I think I'm convinced. Have I got anything else to ask you? You've covered so much in terms of in terms of the whole industry. What else is there for people to know? Because we talked about the perception issue, right? And I think you've done a pretty good job of dispelling that. People are starting to come around and be a bit more, accepting of it. So what else is there to say to people?
Look, I mean, just give myself, or I'm Olivia Sanders, obviously. There's Duncan Steens in the North Island. He's handling our North Island growers and helping them get up and running. But give us a call, have a chat about it, and we'll take you out on farm, and you can talk to a farmer that's utilising them, you know, and most of our growers, bar David, who has been doing it for 35 years, everyone's relatively new, so the whole industry's coming up together. They'll tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly with the goats. But what I'd like to say is just, you've just got to open up your mind a bit. But yeah, look, they're an amazing animal to be able to get more out of your farm system. And look, if you're wanting to save costs, if I want to spend less time, money and chemical on weeds, run some goats in there. And that can be just their job. I always say to people, they've got to have a job to do aside from the fibre, and so it's either going to be weeds, I'm either going to improve my pasture, like I'm going to improve my clover, or I want to spend less time on the tractor topping because they're almost like a mechanical topper. So there's other jobs that they can do. So yeah, I just encourage people to open up their minds, have a look at our social media and give us a call, and we'll be happy to take you through.
Yeah, and for people that want to do that, there's where do they go? What's the best way to find out?
Yeah.
Obviously look you up on social, but if they want to actually
so
call.
So my number's on our website, which is nzcashmere.com. But you can get a hold of me there or through the Facebook page. I manage that, so I can get back to you then. But we're really excited, and we're wanting to bring people on now. At the moment, bucks are starting to go out for mating. So if someone's going, oh my goodness, she's banging down the door, let's get started. Okay, great. We've got a few white does that can still be, put out around the country. So if you're wanting to get started, let's just do it.
Let's do it. Absolutely. You've brought some fibre in as well.
Yes, I have. Now this is my favourite exercise, even as a merino farmer myself.
Yeah.
So in these 2 bags, these awful looking plastic bags,
yes,
I have 15.5 micron merino, which we know as New Zealanders is really, that's beautiful fibre.
That's luxurious.
That is just
beautiful.
That's the good stuff.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about. But what I've got here is 15.5 micron cashmere.
Okay.
And what I'd like you to do is take your 2 hands and put them into the...
So merino to the left and...
Well, you'll be able to feel the difference.
Oh, yeah, God, you really can. Holy Jesus,
Yeah.
that's like very pronounced. That's
Isn't
unreal.
it?
Yeah.
That's it. And it sounds awful, and you might want to say wash my mouth out with soap, Olivia, but the merino almost feels like cotton wool.
God, it really does. Jesus, they look like they'd be that's unbelievable. Okay, so that, ladies and gentlemen, really is, that's a taste test that you got to do.
Yes.
You got to do this because that's pronounced.
Yes.
Like, that's not subtle.
No, it's not. And like I say, I'm from Central Otago, and when I do this with my neighbours or down at the pub, because I have these in my handbag and I always whip them out. If you see me anywhere, I'll have them in my handbag, and you can do the test yourself. But it's until you feel that difference.
Yeah.
It's just you've got to feel it to believe it, really.
Far out. Okay. Well, Olivia, I have to say, very entertaining, very informative, and very educational now as well. Well, thanks so much for coming in and having a chat with us. Really appreciate it. Let's do it again. I mean, you're obviously, out and about all the time, and you'll be, I imagine, at field days and all sorts of events around the place. So, let's not be strangers.
Absolutely.
And keep the momentum going.
Awesome. Thanks for that.